Welcome to today's episode of the Empire Builders Mastercast. Honoree Corder, how are you?
I am so good. Hi, Lucas. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. I feel like it's been forever. We're back. We're here. Look,
It has been the equivalent of forever
yeah.
in
I
dog
mean,
years, at least forever.
yeah, it kind of worked out. I think a little bit yeah, in our favor for the summer vibe. Of like
Right.
got a couple of weeks to get ready for the fall rush.
Yeah.
And it's always nice to have that little bit of time at the end of the summer, but it's not like we were taking vacations. We were like cranking busy.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
our schedules definitely did not align. The weeks I was available to do a live, you were
yeah,
unavailable, and vice versa, because we both did take time during the summer to vacate, but
yeah.
also there was a lot of productivity. There's been a lot happening.
Mm,
And so, in case you missed it, I'm Honoree Corder. I help aspiring authors become authors and authors to write, publish, and monetize their books. And
that's
this is
right.
my co uh, podcast host, creator in crime, in books, also in crime,
Maybe in crime.
maybe in crime. We haven't committed any crimes, but
Yeah,
it's still early.
yeah. We're waiting for the right one to come along.
That's right.
Because if you're gonna do it right.
That's
So
right. Go big or go home.
that's right.
Yeah. And if you're going to go to jail, it better be for a real. You better have a really good story.
I mean, why else go? You know,
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's good.
Yeah,
It's got
and
to
if
work
you're
out
gonna
for
go
you.
to prison, it better be the best story ever told.
That's right. Um, so I'm Lucas, not yet convicted of any felonies. I help nonfiction authors create courses from their books, and I'm also a nonfiction and fiction author. So here we are doing
Yeah,
things. So
yeah,
much fun. And we have like a lot to catch people up on, but
we do.
it's all related in some way, shape, or form to the topic today of networking, because a
Yeah,
lot of what we've been doing this last month has been networking centric
yeah.
in several different ways. You especially. I mean,
Oh,
you were
all
just
the people.
nailing the conference circuit this last couple weeks.
Yes, in conjunction with my next book, which is coming in a couple of weeks. Not related, but related. I'm
Hmm.
retitling and releasing the book Business Networking, which is about building lifelong relationships and building rainmaker status. So we'll probably we'll have a conversation about that at another time.
Sure.
But in conjunction of that, I was doing a lot of gripping and grinning and shaking and baking and entertaining and just developing amazing relationships. I attended, and I think you've got a couple of conferences under your belt too in the not too recent past. This is definitely
Yeah.
conference season, right? Summertime
Yeah.
is conference season, and it's definitely that for authors of all different genres and topics. And
Yeah.
so I attended in subsequent weeks Killer Nashville, which was awesome. And it
Yeah.
is for mystery, suspense, and thriller writers. And so I did two presentations there. And you can ask me any questions about any of that. And then I attempted to attend BoucherCon, which is a reader conference. It's the largest mystery readers conference and also a ball. Saw authors I knew, met authors that I didn't know, made connections. So many cool connections there. And then I came home not quite dead, but close.
You barely survived
I
Killer
barely,
Nashville.
I barely survived Killer Nashville, and then added a second conference on top of it, which is just not the best idea for. And I would consider myself an ambivert, but I definitely recharge
Yeah.
alone. And conferences are the exact opposite of alone.
Yeah.
So I think I'm still hungover. I think I still have conference hangover from the conference ending this past Sunday.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I have talked about that before. Like when I went to StokerCon, I came back and I was like all out of sorts for days. It had nothing to do with the trip to California and back. It had everything to do with the fact that for 3 days you're just like on, light
Yeah.
switch the whole time.
Well, and you don't want to stop when you're in it. When I'm in it, I'm just like, and what do you write? And who are you? And oh my gosh, my to be read pile, it was to the
Yeah.
moon and back. And now I think I'm going to Pluto.
Well, and there's like a thing. I think people assume that you're going to conferences for specific reasons. And I mean, the networking
Mm,
side of it is one part. Like for me, a lot of times it's book
yeah,
sales because they're fiction
sure.
based and it's an author reader conference where they can get signed books and they can buy books and all the things like you were saying.
Yeah.
You can grow your TBR, but from our side of the fence, it's multifaceted. Not only are you there
Right.
to meet the other people in your industry, but at
Yeah.
these reader conferences, you're there to meet readers, and so
Right.
it's like a you have to keep switching tracks, because you don't want to talk
Yeah.
to the readers about like nerd author stuff, and you don't want to,
No.
the nerd authors folks might not actually be interested in all the details of your stories.
Yes. And my favorite thing about meeting authors is, and I'll tell my favorite reader story in just a second, but my favorite thing about meeting authors is they're mostly the most famous people you've never heard of or you've never
Right.
met, and you wouldn't necessarily recognize them. So you have to
Hmm.
really know who's who at the zoo, right? By reading the conference manual and looking up who's going to be there and looking up what they've done, and and then just talking to them. They're just people. So there's an author who writes thriller suspense I've read for years, Hank Philippi Ryan, and we were in line at Starbucks together, and I recognized her, and she turned around and just started talking to me, super friendly in the line, and I couldn't see her name tag, but I knew who she was. And then there was another woman who just started talking to us. So while we're in this line that thankfully took forever, right? They were taking forever, and they were like, "Oh, the line is taking forever," and I'm like, "I know, this is great."
Can I pay to not let the
Yes,
line
can I
move?
pay them to not hurry because I'm enjoying this conversation? And then she was like, and tell me about you and all that stuff. And I was like, and you're Hank, right? And she goes, yes. And I was like, I'm a longtime reader of yours. Love your work. Thank you so much for writing. And she was like, oh, that's so much, super gracious, super lovely. Everyone is down to earth. They're all there for the same reasons. And I think you can go to conferences to learn. And I think that that's wonderful. But my favorite parts of conferences are the hallways and the
Mhm.
lounge areas and the conference center where you're connecting with other people, because you just never know who you're going to talk to, what synergies you're going to discover, who you're going to make friends with. And it's a great opportunity to be in this bubble.
Right.
And so I made some very good friends at Killer Nashville, thanks to Patrick O'Donnell. I want to give a shout out to Rick Rybicki and Jody Burnett. And I'm reading both of their books right now as fast as my little eyes will take me in the middle of doing all the things, right? It's like this conundrum of like, what do I do? I can only do one thing at a time. What do I do right now? But it was great to come home and just go back, kind of pull in the cocoon and then be like, I'll be reading. So my favorite reader story before I forget is I was waiting to do a panel.
Hmm.
And so we were at the Gaylord in Nashville, which is this humongous conference center. There were simultaneously multi-thousands of people attending different conferences. So like Tractor Supply was having their conference. There were two other conferences happening and BoucherCon at the same time.
Wow.
And so I was like, oh, I'm going to only walk to my room one time and just wait. And I don't want to be searching for it at the last minute. So I got there and they had this nice little seating area. And I'm sitting there by myself because everyone's gone in the conference. And this woman comes up and she sits down and I said, are you an author? And she goes, no, I'm a reader. And I was like, what do you like to read? And she goes, everything. It doesn't matter. It just has to have a murder.
She's my favorite kind of reader.
Right? I'll read everything. And somebody had left because we got these incredible gift bags. They gave you 4 tickets to go to the book room and you could pick 4 of any book there.
Hmm.
So there were just stacks and stacks and stacks of books
That's a
by all
great
different
idea.
publishers. And they just had 4 little coupons. And so you could pick 4 books, which is an impossibility, right? But you
Right.
could only have 4 books because they weren't selling any books. They were only the 4 anyway. and someone had, and so they also gave us this gift bag. It had a t-shirt in it. It had all sorts of wonderful things in it. The gift bag is epic. I'm going to use it from now on as my model for like when I do gift bags, because they were totes, so you could carry all the stuff around. And somebody had taken one of the gifts and left it on the table, and she goes, "Who would leave this? What's wrong with them?" And I was like, "Who would abandon a book? I mean, it's cause for a medical examination, right?" And we just
Yeah.
had this lovely conversation
Get
about
bounced.
how she found out about VoucherCon is somebody wrote about it in their book. And she went,
Oh,
and their
really?
fiction book. Yeah, two characters were like, "Well, how did you meet this person?" And they said, "Oh, I met them at the VoucherCon author conference, writer conference, reader
Really?
conference." And she was like, "Is that a thing?" She's like, "I looked it up, and then it was here in Nashville." And so she's like, "I couldn't wait to come, and now I'm going next year. Next year's in New
Huh.
Orleans."
Yeah.
So I'll see you there, Lucas.
Wow.
Anyway,
Yeah. I'm very much interested in going.
yeah. So anyway, super
Yeah.
fun conferences, had a ball. Killer Nashville is obviously here every year, and then VoucherCon floats around, and they put them close together for the people who are traveling who go to both.
Just go to
But
both.
but boy, there were a lot of us walking around at VoucherCon going "Wee, wee, 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 wee."
You know, I would assume they're gonna like flip flop the order every year just to be fair to the conferences. You know, it's like
Well, no, they're all independent. I think they just put them together. I
that's
think,
what I'm saying. Like, you
but
know,
next year
if you're
it's Killer
coordinated enough,
Nashville in August
right?
and VoucherCon in New Orleans in September. So there's a
So they're
nice
still in the same order.
recovery
Yeah.
break. There's a nice recovery
Yeah.
break there for those of us who will attend
Nice. Yeah.
everything. Yeah.
Well, and I think part of the reason why it's so nice to connect with readers at those events, because I mean, you know, like it's like you were saying, you meet all these authors, and sometimes,
Mhm.
well, authors are readers, so you usually meet people that are fans of your work as well, but they're usually in the same profession, or they're at least interested in that same profession. But
Yeah.
it's super cool when you go to like a reader specific conference where like there are tons of readers and it's not just focused on authors and craft and all
Right.
that stuff, because even the panels end up being themed much differently. Like when I go to StokerCon, it's for the Horror Writers Association, so the main audience are publishers, writers,
A bunch of
agents.
deranged, sick people. I
Yeah,
mean,
the
just
best
kidding.
time you've ever had in a
Don't
hotel
kill me.
lobby.
Don't kill me in your next book.
Yeah. But then, you know, when you go to a thing like AuthorCon, which is run by a nonprofit, which is Scares That Care, which is like, you know, they donate
Mm,
money to families with cancer and childhood illness and all that.
right.
That's a reader centric event. And
Uh,
you're there basically with, it's like a 50-50 split. It's like a whole room full of authors, but they're there for the
yeah.
readers. And I got to have the most fascinating conversations with people that have never read my stuff and were like, let me get a copy of your book. And then people that have read your stuff, you've actually met online and you've never seen this person face to face
Yeah.
before.
Which is so cool, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's important for us to really talk about things to consider when you're
Hmm.
going to a conference,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? In terms of how to maximize networking. I have ideas, but what do you think, Lucas? How do you make the most of your time and those connections while you're there?
Yeah. I think the first thing is just like getting my brain calibrated for the kinds of conversations that I want to have, not just the ones that are just going to come my way. So I'm very big on like if I'm going to a conference where it's a lot of industry folks, I want to learn maybe like how to address certain things in my own profession that I'm either experiencing for the first time or whatever. So I'll seek advice from other people in
Yeah.
those conferences.
Yep.
I'll be looking at like the way people are doing handling their business through that lens instead of just like I'm just here and seeing everything. So I kind of try to prioritize my own, you know, I hate to say needs for what's happening in my business right now, but I do. I think about like where am I at right now and where do I need to be going and how are other people doing that? And I look at that in the conference because you're surrounded by pros. Like,
Right.
you know how many times I've sat like 3 feet from Jonathan Mayberry and
Did you
watched him
tell him
on a
I said
panel?
hi?
Yeah. Well, the first time I was at a conference where I saw him was at
20 books, right?
yeah, 20 books last
Yeah.
year. And
Yeah.
then he was at StokerCon this year and I was at a panel with him. One of the reasons why Jonathan Mayberry is fascinating to me at conferences is because A, he's done what I want to do successfully,
Mhm.
and B, he's like the most approachable dude.
As
So,
are you. So you've
well,
got one box checked already, which I think, but
yeah,
it's important to be approachable
sure.
and be
Yeah.
human, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Especially as a writer. In every profession, I
All right.
think it's important for people to feel like they can talk to you, but as a
Sure.
writer, you're asking people to
Yeah.
give you their time primarily.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
anyway,
and the specific thing I'm like the filter I have in place with him in particular is that he's a multi-genre writer. And there's a lot of people out there who will say, no, 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 don't betray the algorithms. Stay in this very tight
yeah,
lane. You'll end up messing up your career.
yeah.
And then you meet Jonathan Mayberry, and he's like, I write crime, I write sci-fi, I write horror, I write comic
Mystery,
books.
thriller, comic
Yeah,
books.
he edits anthologies. He
You
writes
too can write a
novels.
romance novel, Lucas.
I could, although if I went that far out of the lines and it had nothing to do with horror or thriller, I would definitely use a pen name.
Yeah, you'd have to use another pen name for sure.
It's just like so far like
Until you
away.
have a name like Jonathan Mayberry
Right.
or James Patterson. I'm reading Tiger Tiger, which is
Right.
a nonfiction biography about
Mm.
Tiger Woods,
Right.
written by James Patterson. But
Hmm.
the combination of those two people, I went, bye now.
Right.
Right. So when you have a name that's that recognizable, and that day will come, everyone mark my words,
We'll
for
see.
Lucas, that day will come.
Thank you.
Yes. You'll be able to write whatever you want. Wherever the wind blows you, you'll be able to do whatever you want. That's
Yeah.
my prediction.
I
Yeah.
mean, so I think it's good to be able to like find kind of unofficial mentors and people to, kind of
Mhm.
model yourself after. On the flip
100%.
side of that, I have met some people that were definitely very far ahead of me in their careers as a writer. And after meeting them, I'm like, I will not be modeling myself after that person.
Yeah.
So I
So
think,
what specifically? What did you discover that you thought? Because
uh,
it's interesting, right? We're
right.
suggesting that you go and network,
Yeah.
and what are you looking for, either to do or not do? I'm absolutely curious about that.
So I've met a couple of authors who aren't very good talking to people. And I'm not talking about being like, hey, pew, pew, not like that. When we say networking, I'm not talking about like putting on a fake face, like being yourself and being a good human to other humans. So if you go to a conference and everyone, gets to meet a person and they end up being exactly who they are,
Yes.
and you can respect who they are, that's helpful. When
Yeah.
someone is not someone who you could respect because they don't treat people well or they don't interact with people in a professional manner, that's a no for me. So
Right.
I've gone to conferences where it's mostly writers, and I've been like, "Hey, I want to get a copy of your book." We've talked to each other on socials, and they don't even make eye contact with you. They're not like wanting to talk to you at all. They're like, "Yeah, yeah, what's your name?" And you're like, "Lucas," and they're like, "Yeah, here you go, man." Like, and they just hand it to you, and like they're just
It's
like,
a transaction
"Yeah,
combined probably with
right,
social awkwardness
right,
that comes from being an introvert, and so not having social skills. And you can be an introvert
right."
and not really enjoy the process of talking to people. But I met the lovely and fantastic Mark Cameron.
Hmm.
So ask me about that when you're done sharing your story, because I want to talk. I want to talk about how wonderful he. I want to say who he is, and then I want to talk about him, because I think he pulls a page right out of the introvert who doesn't love it but does it, and does it beautifully.
Yeah, I mean, I have a friend like that, who is the most introverted person and will sit there and absolutely just kind of sit in their little world at a conference like that. But when you approach them, they're kind, they're
I can hear you.
interested,
I'm right here.
you know, it's like, hey man, you're actually someone I would want to interact with. And
Yeah.
he might not be 100% comfortable in the room, or with the circumstances, but he's still
Yeah.
respectful and professional. And
Right.
that's I guess the big thing for me is like you're respectful and you're professional. So
Well, and also get excited about the fact that you're talking to someone about your book,
yeah,
the
it's
book
cool.
that you spent a lot of hours writing at, and keep in mind the number one way people find out about a book is through recommendation.
Yeah.
And so if you've ever met your favorite actor, author, uh, postmaster, right? And they took a moment to shine their light on you. And I really picture the light that has been shined on me by a few people as an actual like coal miner spotlight that you wear
Mhm.
on your forehead. And so when you take that light and you shine it on someone, they remember that forever. There's a
Mhm.
famous pro football player that I asked to sign a, a dollar bill because it's the only paper I had on me when I came face to face with him. And he is so rude to this day when I see him commentating on television. I'm always like, oh, that guy. Right. And of course, Byron is a fan of his because they hail from the great state of Louisiana. I'm probably narrowing it down.
Now you've got some good room
Yeah, I
still.
know, I've got some good room in there, but you know who you are. Right? So super rude. It's like my stepson at the time is a super big fan of yours. This is the only paper I have. Is there any way you could sign it? It would totally make his day. He's like, no. And just at the Pro Bowl, so totally rude. I was like, wow, all right then. Right?
Did he play for the Cowboys?
No,
Okay, good.
no former Cowboys were rude in this scenario. Anyway, um,
As a Giants fan, I'm expecting it's either coming from one of
expecting it
two
to be
teams.
yeah, we're expecting him to be a Cowboy because not America's team
Yeah.
if you're a New Yorker. Anyway, um,
Who do you think you are calling yourself America's team?
that's right.
But go ahead. Sorry.
I think we just made a hard left at ESPN right now. I think we're in trouble.
We
So
never get
anyway,
hate mail. We're going to get hate mail for this one.
yeah. So when you think about being an author, regardless of how introverted you are and how uncomfortable it is to go into a room of people that you don't know and talk to person after person after person, and you know how draining that's going to be and how it's going to suck the very life out of you. You also need to keep in mind that these are brief situations where you have the opportunity to share your enthusiasm for your books, your characters, and their enthusiasm for your work, and convey that enthusiasm. If they've never heard of you, shine your light on them so that they are excited to pick up your book and they're going to tell people about it. It's interesting because I was having coffee with someone yesterday and she said, "Oh, that reminds me to tell you about this person that I follow." And he has this newsletter. It goes out every Tuesday and it's really good. And he has this membership and it's $14 a month. And then there's this other thing. And I'm like, "Are you a member of the membership?" "No." And she's like, "And I haven't done the other thing either." She's like, "But I really look forward to those emails." And she's like, "And I'm telling you about it." And I was like, "That's how it works. It's here we are.
Mm-hmm.
We're sitting in a coffee shop. I've never heard of this guy." Now I'm like, okay, now I'm going to get yet another newsletter in my inbox. I'm probably going to start paying $14 a month to be part of their community or whatever. I'm going to buy all the things because someone told me about them. And
Yeah.
here we go. Right.
Yeah.
And so you have to just suck it up, buttercup, rub some dirt on it and go and meet people and
Yeah.
talk to them. And so that's one aspect, right? Is the connecting with the prospective readers and to not be transactional at all, even if that's how you feel.
Right.
Because transactions occur in the environment of a relationship that you're building with the reader, which most of it will be one-sided. From then on, they're going to buy your books. They might send you the occasional email, but you want them
Yeah.
to to go, oh, Lucas has another book. Elsie Marino has another book. I got to
Mhm.
buy it. I got to pre-order it. I mean,
Right.
I have a very dear friend who writes thrillers, some of the best thrillers I read. I just ordered her full price hardcover yesterday. She's like, I would have given you one. I'm like, I know. I know you'll be signing this one. And if you give me another one, I'm going to give it to someone and I'm going to turn someone on to your work. That's how
Mm.
it works.
Yeah.
Yes. So what else you got?
Um, I mean, outside of the conferencing thing, because, when it comes to general networking, I feel like a lot of people feel like conferences are like a special tier because they're expensive compared to other,
Sure.
like networking on social media or whatever. I think, modern kind of technology has facilitated this ability to network in different spaces. So like I've met most of the other authors before I ever walked into a conference on social media
Yeah. You know
or
who
on
they
like a
are.
yeah, or like a Discord server or whatever. Even as like an indie publisher, so having a small press now, I'm going to a conference this week. One of the other press owners reached out to me and said, "Hey, is that you on this table 23 I'm seeing at this conference?" I said, "Yeah." They're like, "Dude, first round of coffee's on me. I'll see you there." We've never met face to face,
That's so good.
but we've met on X or whatever,
Yeah.
2-3 years we've been talking to each other. So
The social media site, not the drug.
correct. Yes. Yes.
We
Although
were on
put the
X.
two
Oh,
together.
okay. Do tell.
Yeah, it was great. Um, so
Perfect.
yeah, so I think, forming relationships wherever they may be,
Yeah.
and then leveraging that kind of organic development of a relationship, wherever it may be, to then get to know someone better really helps out. And that a
Yeah.
lot of that's author to author. So some authors aren't really comfortable talking to everyone on social media because they do have a large following and they get a lot of
Right.
grifters and people that cling and maybe even some inappropriate types of relationships where people are just a little too personal with them and they're like, dude, you're a
You're
stranger.
just so pretty. I want to buy you pretty things.
Yeah. Problem I don't have, but a lot of people I know do is like, these kind of unhealthy relationships. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that because of that, there's a hesitation sometimes to connect quickly with people. And
Yeah.
I think you have to be aware of the fact that you are networking
Yeah.
on social media and it is professional and it isn't just a place to like drop your grievances because other authors are reading what you're saying and other event planners are reading what you're saying and readers are seeing what you're saying. And so
Yeah.
if that's not part of your brand, you got to be careful that it doesn't actually reflect negatively on your brand. And,
Right.
so for me, a lot of the connections I made with authors was on social media first. That was where most of my networking was happening.
Yeah. But the place that it really takes hold is when you're breaking bread together, when you're
Oh,
sitting
yeah.
at a conference and you're connecting.
Yeah.
And so Patrick O'Donnell, who is the host of the Cops and Writers podcast, and he has the Cops and Writers Facebook group. He's a retired sergeant from the Milwaukee Police Department, and so he helps crime writers get their facts straight. Is the
Right.
gun right? Would this really happen? Would you get to ride in the front of the police car with no handcuffs on? Share a cup of coffee with the cop? I don't think so. So he's going to help make sure you get your facts right. Well, he brought Jody and Rick. He didn't bring them, but they also came to Pillar Nashville. And so the four of us hung out and went to panels together. And I have to say, having author friends, author buddies,
Hmm.
is makes the conference even better. And so the panels, some were great, some weren't so great. The speakers, some were great, some weren't great. But when you have your author buddies with you and you're getting to go do things, and we went to dinner every night, we had a super good time. And these are the people that you ask to help you.
Yeah.
These are the people that asked you to help them. These are the people whose books you read, and your author friends are, it's almost an imperative to get to know the authors in your space. You need to know the other authors who write books like your books, because readers read so much faster than we're able to produce
Sure.
a book. I can read your book in an afternoon, but you can't write the next book in an afternoon.
Oh my
And
God.
so it's a right.
Don't I wish?
But
That'd be great.
wouldn't it be great? Yes,
Blink.
you can, according to anyone with ChatGPT, right?
Oh, well, it's not. Behave. I don't know if you saw the whole NaNoWriMo thing that's going on right now.
I haven't seen that.
Oh,
But there's nothing more fun
yeah.
than some kind of an publishing meltdown. So we'll talk
Yes.
about it. We'll talk later.
We'll
Um,
talk over coffee.
we'll talk over coffee later.
Yeah.
Um, but knowing the other authors in your space, even as you're writing. So even as I'm working on a thriller, even as I'm working on a cozy series, I'm getting to know who the other cozy authors are. I'm getting to know other thriller writers from a respectful distance with no expectations, right?
Sure.
I'm not
Sure.
I think there's strategic planning, and then there's
Right.
the next level, which is bad, right? People who want to make friends with other people just for an outcome.
Right.
That's not what I'm talking about.
Right.
But it's helpful to read all of the books in your genre or in your area of expertise so that you know what other books are out there, because
Sure.
there's no such thing as a person who reads one book and one author and no other books and no other authors. There's no such thing. So it's a mandate to know other authors for several reasons. One, you want to be recommending your author friends' books to your readers in between your books, right?
Yep.
You want to know how they're writing and learn from them. The best way to become a great writer is to be a great reader, to be a voracious reader. You want to know the space, the landscape, and all the things. And then also, they just make the world a better place, because in as much as our spouses are imminently supportive, right?
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to Byron and Tammy. Um, Other writers only understand other writers,
Mm.
right? I think
Yeah.
there are just things about the profession that are inexplicable to. It's like trying to explain what it's like to have children to people with no children.
Right.
And I remember saying, but my cat is my child. And my friends with children would be like, no, your cat is your cat. I'd be like, no, my cat is my baby. And then I had a baby and I was like, oh, all right, my cat's a cat.
I
Now
didn't
I
have to
have
give birth to my cat. It
my
starts
cat
right there.
doesn't talk back. I mean, there are benefits, right? So now I have the children and the dogs and the cats, and it's like it's a toss up on any given Sunday. But that's a conversation for another day. Nevertheless,
You know, drive your
um,
cat to school every morning and pick it
that's
back
right.
up. And,
That's right.
uh,
So all of that to say is it's really helpful to have people in your profession that understand the comings and goings and machinations of your profession. And the
sure.
best place to meet people and to figure out if you have common ground, commonality, something to form a relationship around is at a conference. Is
Absolutely.
online you're going to figure out who's who, but at a conference you're going to get to be in their energy field and you're going to get to meet with them. And so if you are less skilled at networking or less comfortable at networking, that's a skill to develop for meeting and connecting with other authors and readers. I
Sure.
cannot emphasize that enough. And as much as you might not want to go to a conference, right, it's probably good if you go.
Yeah, I mean, and you can use those things like social media kind of soften the landing with people
Yeah.
beforehand. So if you get into these groups, so for example, I'm going to, or when I went to AuthorCon, I knew a bunch of the other horror authors, but the readers that were going to attend this very reader focused conference were a lot of them are in this one Facebook group that has
Yeah.
thousands of people in it.
Uh-huh.
And so knowing that before the event, there was a lot of buzz in that group about the event, I was like, I should probably pay a little bit of attention to this Facebook group and
Yeah.
communicate with people and
Yes.
interact. And so
Yes.
there were a couple of
100%.
readers. Yeah, they were like, hey, man, I can't wait to see you this weekend. Like
Yeah.
just out of the blue. And I'm like, that's so nice to hear. I'm like, yeah, I can't wait to see you as well. Here's where I'm going to be.
Yep.
And
Yep.
let's get a picture together. Like, I can't wait to talk to you. And like, then
Yeah.
you get to meet these people face to face, and it wasn't like this sudden thing. It was like we kind of like are already warmed up a little bit, and I know to expect to kind of interact with these people. And so that kind of, I think if you're like kind of hesitant to go to
Yeah.
conferences, or if you are selectively only going to a small number of them use those tools to kind of soften the landing
Yes.
before you get there.
Yes. And funnily enough, there was someone I knew in name, and we had connected on social media. We are connected in social media. And so I saw him at Killer Nashville. He had a table. So he was like, nothing says people should come up and talk to me and interact with me like having a table. And so I was like, hey, we haven't met in person. I know your name. I see you and all the things. And he was like, yeah. And I was like, okay. And that was basically him the entire weekend. He was just super not friendly.
Yeah. See?
Yeah.
And now look at you. Jaded.
Jaded.
Just
yes.
angry.
No, I mean, I don't feel like I know him any better.
Yep.
Than I did online. He doesn't necessarily have good press among other authors. And so I always want to have my own experience of someone, because what someone says about you is none of your business, but hopefully it's good. But if it isn't, you would at least want someone to give you the benefit of the doubt if they meet you in person. Right. So I wanted to meet him in person, and he lived up to the word on the street, unfortunately for him. And so now it's over. The event's over.
We've broken up.
No, but I'm just saying there's no reason for me to say it was great to meet you online. It was great to meet you in person. Like there's no reason for me to follow up and say, where will I see you? Will I see you at Author Nation, or would I see you at, Thriller Fest, or would I see you at
next year's event?
If you come in, when you come in early, let's grab a cup of coffee before we're completely, drained. I wanted to say that one of my strategies for conferences is to go right when the conference opens, get your name badge, get your name tag, and then go say hi to all the people in the booths, because it is a lot of work. There's a lot of schlepping.
Yeah.
There's a lot of forethought and planning that goes into having a booth or a table. And very often people just zoom by and don't say anything to you the entire time. And so what I do is I just get there early, and I just get the lay of the land, look around, see who's there, and say hi early when I'm full of energy and vim and vigor, and I'm super excited about the conference, and so are they.
Right.
So I made friends with an audiobook guy who's really cool. He doesn't write, and his wife, and they came in and they set up their thing, and they had the candy and they had all the things on the table. And so we just had a nice 20-minute conversation because nobody was really there yet. It was really cool to have that moment. And so I just went around. There weren't a lot of vendors at this particular conference, but I did make some really good connections very early in the process. And so now we're connected, right? Now we're building our relationship, which will be built over time. And then one of my post-conference strategies is when the dust is cleared, when my batteries are recharged, and I assume everyone else's are too, so 2 or 3 weeks post-conference, I'll do something to get on their radar. Handwritten note, comment through Instagram, something like that. Sign up for their newsletter and then reply to their newsletter. Just some kind of way to start the touches, right? The number of connection points that we have over time to really build that relationship, so that when they think of someone who needs my books and my services, they'll think of me because we built a relationship in advance of anyone needing anything. So they'll feel comfortable referring someone to me. I will feel the same. And then now we have a relationship. And then when you go to conferences, it's more like walking into Cheers than it is walking into a place where you don't know anyone at all.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that is that quiet time in the halls or before the event or whatever. It really is nice because there's no distraction. There's no static. There's nothing pulling your attention away. If you have there's a lot of people that, like, I'm one of them. If I'm in a very, very active room, my ability to focus changes. I'm like,
Yeah.
and it depends on what's happening because
Yeah.
there's certain instances where I can narrow right
Yeah.
in. There's other instances where I have a really hard time focusing. If there's a whole lot going on, then I don't feel
Yeah.
like I'm in danger or something crazy. But
Right.
so, the conference environments, if you're the kind of person that maybe struggles with that a little bit, that quiet time before, like you were mentioning, or outside of the panels, or just in the corner of the lobby or whatever, that might be your most effective time for like focusing on a conversation with the right person,
Right.
you know, and kind of just having that ability because you're better. So I know that about myself,
Yep.
and I am and intentionally will try and reserve certain conversations for certain circumstances based on my abilities.
Yep.
Uh, I had drastically underestimated the last day of a reader conference once where everyone had been telling me the last day is mayhem. Like you're going to sell the most books, you're going to have the most conversations. It's like a mad dash. It's like the first 2 days people are picking, but they're not like really like doing their thing. They're
They're
kind of
not
working the
committing
room.
because they have time.
Yeah, and they're looking at all their options and they're meeting
Yeah.
everybody. And so
Yeah.
you're having like a
Yeah.
lot of, but then on the last day, it was like a blitz and I couldn't have those meaningful conversations.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
was trying to have them, but they were like trying to run to the next 20 tables. So I
Right.
didn't want to be the guy that held them up. I'm like,
Right.
hey, let's get up sometime. And to your point, a lot of that was happening on social media after the event.
Yep.
Just hopping into someone's messages and saying, hey, thanks for that conversation. It really meant something to me. And
Yep. Yep.
I guess one last thing about conferences in particular, I didn't really know how to feel about this with other authors until I was like, man, that's kind of rough. Is not everyone gets the same shake when it comes to table placement or exposure or whatever. So I kind of go out of my way to go talk to the people that may not be the
Yeah.
most popular table or
Yeah.
may not have the
Yeah.
biggest name. Or one of my buddies who's
Right.
like fantastic was like shoved in a corner near the exit door and like no one was traffic, like there's no traffic by his
Mm.
tables and he's like the nicest human. So
Mm.
I made a point of like buying everything on his table and spending time hanging out with them and dragging other people over.
Good. That's just like you, Lucas. You are just a kind soul like that.
Well, thank you. But like, I just felt bad for him because he went like halfway across the country.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, you know,
Well, that's why I go talk to the people at the tables. Go talk to
yeah,
even when I go to in
hmm,
our county, there's an expo every year and people
right,
show up at their table. I go from table to table to table, and not everybody gives good table.
right. Yeah, yeah,
Right? Some
hmm,
people just miss the opportunity to go, well, who are you? Why are you
yeah,
stopping by? Right? So I have to be the driver of the conversation, which is funny, being the
yeah,
visitor.
right,
Welcome to my table. Have you heard of farmers insurance before? Do you have insurance? Do you live on a farm?
right. Yeah,
Have
yeah,
you properly insured your livestock? Like we should talk
right,
about this, right? So, right, not
yeah,
everyone understands. Like they just think having a table, being a vendor is going to be enough, and you've got to have really good skills. But if you're the visitor of the table, having good skills is also helpful, right? Having good
right,
networking and relationship building skills is really helpful,
right.
and asking great questions can sometimes open people up. But there have been many times when I have just talked to people and just thought, why did you spend the $500 for this table? Because this is just bad. It's no good. It's not going to end well for you.
Yeah.
And you did a lot of schlepping.
Not only like in sales,
Yeah.
but like in relationship building.
Yeah.
Because I'm actually going to an event where I will not earn the cost of being there. Absolutely can guarantee it. It's a specific type of event. It's not a big conference. It's a very exclusive kind of small thing, but I'm going to pay more than I'm going to sell in books. That place is not where I'm thinking about book sales. It's where I'm thinking most about relationship building and how
Yeah,
much
you
are
are.
those relationships worth.
Yep.
So, you
And
know,
that is worth many, many, many multiples of
yes,
what you will make in book sales,
yes,
what you will spend in gas,
yeah. I mean,
time, right?
so there's certain circumstances where that fee is everything, and then
It's a
there's other
rounding error.
Right. There's other circumstances where it's like, yeah, no, this was a terrible investment. Like
Yep.
if you can't have that kind of like proximity
Yep.
and kind of private like intimacy with a group of other professionals in your industry or a group of readers that are like your ideal group, like there are so many like other benefits besides the book sale portion of an event, but there are times when the book sale is the thing, and
Right.
that table and the travel fees and everything, you know, that
You gotta have
offsetting
good
that cost.
candy. You gotta collect information.
Yeah. So actually, I wanted to ask you about
Swag.
something that you're very active in that I'm not. And it happens to be more prevalent in the nonfiction world than in the fiction world because of the way, you know, books are structured and who you're marketing them to. But so far, we've been talking a lot about at conferences. But what about actual marketing events and marketing groups or networking? Sorry. What about actual networking groups and networking events? You know, not necessarily conferences, but smaller, more specifically geared networking type style events. How do you feel about those as an author? Is it any different for you than conferences?
Well, it depends on the job of the book, right? So, specifically, what you're talking about is nonfiction, and most nonfiction authors are experts in something and they want to be generating business. And so they're using their book to generate business, not generate book sales. Now
Right.
you don't have to do one or the other. Theoretically you want to do both depending on the job of your book. I have an author who's only given away books. He's never sold a single copy of his book ever. He's given away over 1,000 copies, physical copies of his
Wow.
book, and he's made $23 million to date
Wow.
from giving away books through the contracts that he signs. So he's taken out one of his competitors and
Mhm.
he's buying the other one. So there were three of them, and then there was one.
Right.
Right. So he's like, well, the other one folded, and this one I'm just going to buy
That
because
worked out well.
having a book has been great. So he's networking with his book.
Right.
Generally speaking, so I'm just speaking in generalities, generally speaking, because I have a bespoke book publishing service, the number one way that I uh, get clients is through referral. The second way is by meeting people,
Hmm.
happenstance meetings at networking events, right? And so I have a way that I introduce myself. I have a way that I develop the relationship. I have to get in front of people based on the type of service that I provide. However, regardless of the type of service that you provide, when you have a book, that book has to be in motion. A book in motion is money in motion, and a book at
Right.
rest is money at rest. So every single copy of my books that I have in my trunk, on my bookshelves, on my desk is money at rest. And I want to
Hmm.
get those books in motion. And the only way for me to do that is to go to networking events. And so there's a whole thought process around where do you go?
Right. Well,
Because
and
you
you're
have
in a major, and you're a metropolitan area, so you've got options. I was going to ask you, these
so
are more
many
localized, right?
so many options. And so the type of clientele that I'm after is very specific. And so my job has been to find the places where my potential clients go, and or where the people who serve them as I do are, and go to those places and network and develop relationships with those people.
Mhm.
But nonfiction, just like fiction, there's a benefit to knowing other authors in that space, or knowing the other books that our clients are reading, and knowing those books and knowing those authors
Sure.
and being very well versed in it. And so people are hard pressed when they talk to me to say, have you ever heard of this book by this author? I'm like, yep, read it. It's my job, right? It's my job to create content, to get in front of people in ways that make sense for my business. And that's every nonfiction author. And it's just figuring out what are the best places for them to be, because you can only be so many places,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because on the fiction side, I think a lot of people miss that point. Like it's no different on the fiction side. Like
Yeah.
the application of the thinking, like you should be going where your readers are,
Yep.
or the types of people that would be your potential readers,
Yep.
and you should be marketing to them. And some of the ways that works with fiction is like related conferences that aren't author book related conferences. So
Yep.
like I'm going to one in Richmond called It's Nightmare Weekend. It's all about like 80s and 90s horror movies. And they've got actors coming in and all this stuff. Yeah, I'm going to be an author at a horror movie and horror television conference with a
Great.
table selling books. Why? Because these are the same people that are interested in my
That's
types
right.
of books. But this isn't a reader or book conference. And so, that's when you start thinking about where are my readers,
Yep.
it's not just like at the conference about reading horror or reading that type of nonfiction or
Yep.
self-help is, I mean, it's huge, right? I mean,
Yep.
how many self-help books are there out there?
Yep.
But certain conferences are geared towards solving certain problems that
Right.
those certain books
Perfect.
address.
Yes. Perfect example.
Yeah.
My divorce books, my single mom books, and my single dad book, I found the vendor for divorce lawyer conferences.
Wow.
And they take my books to all of those conferences all over the country. So every so often I'll just get an order. We're just doing our underway replenishment.
So salty. You're such a
So I know all the terminology, Lucas. But I had to think about who benefits from my books and who serves those who benefit from my books, and how do I move the fulcrum?
So you didn't just publish on Amazon and just wait for readers to find you.
I did not.
Yeah. It's
I
funny how
did
that
not.
works.
Yeah, I actually only know one person personally who wrote and published her first epic fantasy book and now has a multi-book deal with Tor and makes millions of dollars a year. And nobody edited her book. She designed her own cover. And the first month she made $30,000 and she's never looked back.
Wow.
That's only really happened to one person.
Yeah, it's an anomaly, yeah.
In the history of ever, right? Everyone else, we're wearing our rain jacket. We've got wellies up to our thighs and we're trumping through 6 feet of mud, starving with a cup of coffee. Like you just have to put in the work. And the way to make that path easier is through effective networking. And the way to build your empire is through one mutually beneficial win-win relationship after the next.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to ask you a question that some people might not consider this networking. I absolutely think it is. And this just because I'm coming from a business mind versus an artist mind kind of perspective on this. But I feel like my email list is networking because I get to communicate directly with the people that have come to my website and said, I'm interested in this person and their work, and they've actually subscribed. And so they're a contact, and I can network with them in a kind of, in a way that feels like safe and kind of distance for them, right? Like they're not like being pinned down. They can just read your email when they want to. So you're very good at this. You're a phenomenal email marketer, in my personal opinion. I have been receiving your marketing emails for years now, and I never ever go, right? It's always
it's her again.
yeah. I mean, and I know you, so it'd be like a really easy thing for me to go, do I really need to read this email? I could just be talking to Honoree, but every time I open it and I read, because I'm like,
Thank you.
if I'm not learning something for the first time, I'm being reminded of something that was very valuable. And so I feel like one of the ways that people can market, if they're not comfortable necessarily with being super active on social media or have the means of attending these conferences, is that they can focus on something a little bit more personal, but also a little bit less personal, like your email list.
Yep. That is definitely one way to network. It's how you develop a relationship with people, one inbox message at a time. The right people are going to stick with you and read every email. The people who are not interested in what you're providing and selling and offering will unsubscribe.
Right.
And so I used to look at the unsubscribes and go, oh, what was it about that email? Now I'm like, bye. Right? It's called, as Ollie Richards says, Ollie Richards is the founder of story learning. So he teaches foreign languages through story, which is how you learned your native language. Right. So he's come up with this whole methodology. And I recently read a case study that he did, and I'll leave a link in the chat because he's like, give it to everyone, spread the word. Right. And so here we are. I'm telling you about someone, you're going to discover him, and it's going to maybe change your life. But he talks about how an unsubscriber is reason for celebration. because that just
Right.
means they weren't the right person for you. And
Right.
if you there are other people to follow who teach copywriting and email list development. The ones that I resonate with the most are the ones who talk about authenticity, authentic connections, finding your authentic voice, attracting the right people to you, developing relationships with them so that they want to buy. Like a super fan is the person who buys a book or buys a product from you and then is like, where have you been all my life?
Right.
This is exactly what I want. And so we all want people who buy everything we sell and tell everyone they know about it. That's the name of the game, is to be so authentically awesome in yourself that other people are the right people can't wait for all of those things.
Mm.
And I had someone email me the other day and he's like, I'm on your fourth book and I'm just, I'm loving it. Thank you so much for all of your writing. And of course, I'm like, that's amazing. Thank you for writing. I'm so honored that you would read not just one book, but four.
Yeah.
And you're still looking at different things. That's amazing. And so you don't know who's reading, you don't know who's watching, you don't know who's listening, you don't know who's subscribing, but there are people that are very much paying attention to what you're doing and you just want to replicate that. And the easiest and fastest way to do that is through your email
Right.
list, because it's the only thing you own. You don't own Instagram, you don't own X. You might own ecstasy, but that's a conversation for another day. You don't own LinkedIn, you don't
Yeah.
own Facebook, right? None of those. You
Right.
don't own any, you don't even own the roster of the club you belong to.
Right.
Right? The clubs are the organizations you belong to. What you do own is your email list, and that should be your focus. Or as my friend Tim Grawl says, you have two jobs: to grow your email list and to ask yourself, what can I do to grow my email list? Those are your two
Mm.
functions, and everything else is secondary. Now there's a whole lot to that, and
Sure.
I still consider myself in kindergarten in two subject areas: one, French, and two, email. Because I feel like every time I figure something out, I pull back another layer of the onion and I'm like, oh, okay.
There's something I should be doing.
There's something I should be doing. I should be doing more effectively or differently. And it's
Yeah.
every single day. So I can't believe I just looked at the clock. The last time I looked, it was 10:43. Now it's 10:59. I'm not sure how that happened, Lucas.
That's all good.
To that second grade teacher who told me I would not make a living from talking, take that. I think I'm doing it.
I never heard that from anyone, but I did have a senior officer tell me one time, you were born with two ears and one mouth for a reason.
Right? Well, I
I
did.
was
I
like,
had to write on the blackboard in second grade 50 times. I will not make a living by talking. I will
that's
not make a living by
terrible.
talking. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Really?
And I'm left-handed. So I was getting the chalk. Oh, yeah. I remember this like it was the sandwich I ate for lunch yesterday.
That's
100%.
hilarious.
I will not make a living by talking. And I mean, it's like such a weird thing for a second grader to have to write, right? Super weird. But I had chalk
But
all in my hand, and then, of course, I was busted, so I had to take a note home, and I, had the little note in my Holly Hobby lunchbox that I had to give to my mom and dad, and so then I got in trouble with mom and dad for talking in class. Hmm. Well,
well, now look at you.
well, this was 1977, kids, and look look what's happened. I think it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you
Odd.
had a Holly Hobby lunchbox, I want you to leave a message in the comment because you were
I did
my
not. I had Star Wars though.
You had Star Wars. Well, you're
Yeah.
younger than me, so you would have
Yeah.
been the
I had the early '80s like tin, like
yeah, yeah.
with the metal
The
like
metal
clasp on
latch.
it. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yep, with the handle, you could whack somebody with it.
Oh my gosh. I did. I beat the crap out of my brother's legs with it.
Yeah.
Just
No, yeah,
whack, whack, whack.
those were the days, Lucas.
Yeah, and then we went to plastic, and it all went downhill.
That's right. That's right.
I remember, like, if you washed the one that was plastic too much, like the sticker on the front would start to peel off, but like
Uh-huh.
the metal ones, they were just
Yeah.
like, good
They're
old
they
stamped
I
tin.
think you could use them today. I could be literally
Yeah.
carrying my lunch around in my Holly Hobby lunchbox. That thing is made of steel. Right?
Yeah, I probably have aluminum poisoning from all the food I ate.
Yeah, it's fine. We're fine.
It's all right. That and
Everything's
the
fine.
deodorant, we're gonna be fine.
That's right.
I have enough aluminum in my body to make like a a couple of cases of beer or whatever. But
That's right.
anyway, this was a good time. We've kind of like run out of time to do some of the things we usually do. But do you
Yeah.
want to do like a rapid fire like list of like 2 or 3 books that you've been reading?
Well, I've been reading clients' books, so I can't talk about them.
Yeah, me
Um,
too.
yeah. So
So maybe not.
so we can talk about your most recent book, which is, what did you most
Um,
recently release?
oh, my most recent release was Burn the Girls.
Okay.
But my upcoming release is Bless the Mother.
Okay.
So
And my most recent release is Vision to Reality: How Short-Term Massive Action Equals Long-Term Maximum Results. And my upcoming release is Business Networking: Become a Rainmaker and Develop Long-Lasting Relationships that will stand the test of time. And
love it.
so that will come out on September the 23rd of this month. And then my next book is coming October the 28th, but we'll have to come back and talk about that later.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Can't
Well,
wait. All right. Well, guys, if you've been watching our show for a while, you're probably familiar with our cadence. That is going to change a little bit because we're not going to be
yeah.
doing weekly lives anymore. We're spacing some things out so we can focus on other elements of the business and communicating with you guys. So if you like the very frequent conversations and stuff, go to our website and join our email list. Speaking of, and or you can also find us on Substack. So go check out Substack, and you can follow us there as well. And we've been dropping tons of nuggets. Honoree's been kind enough to write these really insightful, valuable articles that she's been releasing on the newsletter. So I encourage you guys to go check that out so that you can communicate with us on a regular basis. And then keep your eyes peeled because we'll be putting out some future videos, just not every week. So
Yeah. Well, we'll be back. This isn't the end.
that's
This is
right.
just the beginning of what's
That's
next
right.
for us. And we have over 100 videos. So you have
Yes.
100+ hours of content to consume. So if this is the first time
Yes.
you've ever seen us, we have lots of good content that we crafted for you, and it will walk you through the entire process of crafting, writing, publishing, launching, marketing, and monetizing your book, building courses, building
That's
other
right.
income streams. There is a lot for you on this channel and on our podcast. So check all of that out. Send us a note, leave a comment, and say hello. And thank you for hanging in there this long today and listening and watching. We appreciate